Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and in this one, we're talking about Spider Man. In our game world, the original Spider Man was Peter Parker the first. He was bitten by a radioactive spider in the 1960s when he was a teenager, right? About 20 years later, give or take, he married Mary Jane Watson. They had a little girl who Peter named after his dear Aunt May. So that girl grew up to be Mayday Parker, aka Spider Girl. And that would have been around the year 2000, give or take a little, right? More years passed, and she was one of many characters who went by the name Spider Woman, right? The original Spider Woman wore a red and yellow costume. She was doing stuff in kind of the late 70s and early 80s and stuff like that. And in our game world, she was actually replaced by a Skrull imposter named Varanki. And since our game world is an alternate universe, it's a what if you will. Um, our Varanki was genuinely heroic. She was very different than the Varanki of Earth 616. But like her counterpart, she eventually became the Empress of the Skrull Empire, right? And so we had this big event that was based on Blackest Night from DC Comics as well as the Marvel Zombies stuff, right? And a lot of the world's famous superheroes were no more after that huge dark event. One of the survivors in our game world, though, was the Scarlet Witch. And our Wanda, by the way, again, unlike the one from Earth 616, is actually far more heroic, right? But our Wanda was devastated to see her friends lose their lives and so on and so forth, right? And more than anything, she wished that things were like they used to be before the dark times, right? So we said that subconsciously her ability to warp reality was affecting the world, that she was going to make the world more like it was before what we now refer to as the dark age of Earth K. So, specifically, what that meant was in the case of Spider Girl, Mayday Parker, when she had a son, not only did she name him after her dad, as he was growing up, he was influenced by the powers of Wanda Maximoff, so that he he not only had his grandpa's name and his grandpa's powers, but he really had his grandpa's personality. You know what I mean? And to be really blunt, that was us trying to make our game world kind of recognizable again, right? The desire to do that came from out of game. And then that was the in-game reason for why that happened. So we were trying to right the ship. But so that said, now in the modern day on Earth K, our current Spider-Man is Peter Parker II, and he is the grandson of the original, right? And he heard lots of stories of his grandfather's adventures. So one day, Peter is web slinging through town and he picks up a newspaper from the Daily Bugle. In our world, they're still putting out traditional newspapers for the moment. That might not keep going forever, but for the moment, they still are. And on the front page of the Daily Bugle, it's talking about how Spider Man committed some kind of a crime. So Peter is upset. He didn't do this. he assumes this is the same old from the Daily Bugle, right? So he pops his head in and he is talking with the editor of the Daily Bugle. And so this guy is basically another J. Jonah Jameson. And again, this is a result of what the Scarlet Witch was doing to kind of reset the game world and make everything familiar again, right? And then this guy would be the son of Man-Wolf, if you're familiar with that Marvel character. Man-Wolf was John Jameson. He was an astronaut. He was the son of the original J. Jonah Jameson from classic Spider-Man comics. So the new JJ, um, it turns out, is not actually lying. He's like, no, we have, evidence that Spider-Man committed this crime. So upon seeing this evidence, Peter realizes there's another Spider-Man in town. And to be very clear, this is not Miles Morales. We haven't really dealt with that yet, although we are going to try to tackle that sometime soon here. Um, but this is a guy wearing the exact same costume that Peter wears, right? The red and the blue, classic Spider-Man suit. So he wants to get to the bottom of this. He goes out to clear his name. And unfortunately, the Fantastic Four come to blows with him because they think Spider-Man has gone bad, right? And so mostly the two who are at the forefront of this fight scene are the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing, right? Who is the grandson of the original Thing, and then the new Human Torch, who again, it's the same with all the heroes. And we've been seeing this across Earth K, right? What the Scarlet Witch has done has affected an entire generation of supers. We have not really seen that happen with the villains, though. That's worth pointing out. But let's put a pin in that for right now. So, at any rate, we get our classic hero versus hero tussle. Spidey is saying he's innocent, And so Reed Richards kind of calls a timeout, and Reed is very quick to start listing off possibilities. This could be a Spider-Man from another universe. This could be a robot imposter. This could be a clone, This could actually really be Spider-Man doing it, but it's some sort of mind control. And if he is doing it, he doesn't remember doing it. So maybe we should look at a vampire villain or something with mesmerism and so on and so forth. But they decide to work together. And upon doing so, they encounter this other Spider-Man. And so this guy, they fight him and he manages to get away. And during the course of the whole thing, he monologues a little bit and refers to himself as the chameleon. And of course, there was a chameleon in the past, and he had fought the grandfather of our current Spider-Man. But our current Spider-Man has no chameleon that he has fought in this generation, right? So they don't know who this new guy is. And this new chameleon seems to be kind of one step ahead. And then the other thing that's confusing is they will chase him into, for instance, an alley or something that's a dead end, and he just seems to vanish. And they don't know what's up with that either. And so they're trying to piece all this together. They have another fight with him, and this time, he bleeds. He gets hurt, and he leaves a little bit of blood behind. So Reed decides to test the blood because he wants to know, is this an alternate Peter Parker? Is this like a time traveler that is, the original Peter Parker for some reason? Like, what is going on here? And it turns out the new chameleon is a Skrull. And that is a big revelation for our game world because the Skrulls seem like they have turned good, right? And because the Empress of the Skrull Empire now in our game world has been depicted as very, very good. Like, to put this in D&D terms, she'd be lawful good. So they're really surprised by this. So the Fantastic Four end up going into space to talk to the Empress of the Skrulls. And when they get there, what they find out is now there is a Skrull civil war. So back in the classic era, back in like the 1960s and stuff like that, there was a Skrull emperor and he was a jerk. And under his leadership, back then the Skrulls were depicted as villains. And then in the 80s, right around the time that Johnny Storm was dating a Skrull girl for a while, that kind of changed, right? And we were starting to see a shift in how the Skrulls were. And so by the time we got to what would be the year, like 2005, 2010, something like that, the Skrulls then seemed to be totally good. And that was really the last time we saw the Skrulls. So it turns out this Civil War has been going on for a while, and we find out that the Skrulls, like humans, you know, have a huge range of alignments, right? And that some of them are lawful good, some of them are like chaotic evil, right? And you get everything in between. And so the gist is that yes, this lawful good chick is still the Empress, and she is ordering people to be good, but they don't like her. I mean, I worded that wrong. About half of them do not like her, right? And so there's sort of this rebellion. And what's going on with the Skrulls is almost like Star Wars if you were to reverse the alignments. So imagine sort of like a mirror universe Star Wars, where you would have like a lawful good Palpatine, and then your Luke Skywalker would be like an evil rebel trying to bring down this good empire. That's kind of what's going on with the Skrulls in a way, right? So there are these rebels, and they are raiding various government installations. They're stealing bits of technology that they are not supposed to have their hands on. And so what we see here is sort of like a pirated version of the Super Skrull technology. But because this is sort of like, I don't know if I want to call them a ragtag group of rebels, I feel like that's underselling them a little. But the point is, their version is not like with the Super Skrull. Classically, his deal is he has the powers of all four members of the Fantastic Four, right? And then we saw a Super Skrull, and he had the powers of four of the founding Avengers, stuff like that, right? Um, so it always seemed to be groups of four. What we are now seeing is evil Skrull rebels who only have the powers of one classic Marvel character, right? And so it turns out, even though this guy is calling himself the Chameleon, the guy who's on Earth, um, the shape shifting, it's not that he has the powers of the original Chameleon. He actually has all the powers of the original Spider-Man. And his ability to shapeshift is just what every Skrull can do, right? So he can do everything Spider-Man can do, and he can shapeshift. And then on top of that, he has alien tech like a teleporter on his person. And so that's how he's able to go into a alleyway and open a portal and dive through it really quick with his spider agility. And the portal shuts before the heroes round the corner and run into the alley. Um, so this guy is very slippery in terms of having the ability to get away and evade capture and so on and so forth. So while the Fantastic Four are in space getting answers, and then they get attacked by rebels in space who just so happen to have the powers of some classic Fantastic Four villains like Blastar and guys like that. And then one of them is a nihilist. So the Fantastic Four have their hands full. There's a lot of fights in space, and in the end, of course, good triumphs over evil, right? And what they've learned is that this war is happening, and for some reason, the rebels are infiltrating Earth, but they don't know why, And when they're talking to the Skrull Empress, she can't help them because that's the enemy. She has no idea what the enemy's plans are. And then on Earth, our current Spider-Man finally beats down our current chameleon, takes his tech away from him, so on and so forth, and then turns him over to S.H.I.E.L.D. So then S.H.I.E.L.D. questions him, and we have a modern Nick Fury now, and he is trying to interrogate this Skrull, but so far the Skrull has not talked. So this is the first in a series of games that are going to be very spider centric. Um, and so we didn't want to totally wrap everything up in this game. We want there to be, more to do next week, basically. But this went over really well. I really liked this adventure. My players really liked this adventure. I hope you liked hearing about it. If so, as always, we'd love it if you smashed that like button. Check to make sure you're still subscribed because YouTube loves to unsubscribe you without telling you. And last but not least, leave us a comment. I'd be curious. Have you ever played in a game with the Skrulls? How did you run them? Um, or maybe have you done Spider-Man games, or are you a fan of the classic villain, the Chameleon? Um, I would love to hear your input. And from everybody here at the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, we hope you guys have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.